When we look at our end-to-end carbon footprint, 95% of that is Scope 3 emissions and 77% is our upstream supply chain. So for us to get to net zero, it's really important that we focus on how we reduce our supplier emissions. So we've come up with a concept where we have a contract clause in supplier contracts that requires them to report on their emissions on a quarterly basis and to make reductions throughout the contract period. In the past, we've done a number of initiatives where I, who look after sustainability, would go and talk to sustainability folks in some of our big suppliers. And that was really interesting, but it didn't have the weight and the teeth behind it because it wasn't doing it together with our buyers and together with procurement. So through this contract clause, we have been able to put a review on performance on carbon reduction into executive regular reviews. And I think that has really helped to move things forward. It's easy for suppliers to make superficial commitments, but we need to make sure that they are robust. So having a conversation early on around the contract clause and what is right for that supplier to do is really important as we collaborate and try to identify appropriate opportunities. I think you can boil down the challenge for the supplier into three things. The first one is around motivation. We can motivate suppliers to take action through the contract clause, but also by presenting, business cases about what other people have done in the past and how that has been successful. The next one is around understanding and supporting our suppliers in understanding what we practically want them to do. And finally, there's the resourcing. And that's not just about having a person within the supplier to work on this. It's also building that longer term resilience in the supplier in case the person moves on. So you don't lose all that work that you've done already. So these are long-term targets. They need consistent work and long-term dedication. We engage with our suppliers both in a group and as individual suppliers. So, for example, we have group workshops, we have webinars where we talk about CDP disclosure or EV transition, but there are certain things that they don't want to talk about in a group. So we also have one-on-one engagement with them to understand a bit more what their challenges are specifically and to hold them accountable. We also have to look at what does the supplier want to achieve? What's their maturity? And based on that, look at what is feasible for this supplier to do. So sometimes you have to upskill your suppliers before you can set any expectations. And sometimes you need to bring examples from their specific industry of what they can do. I think one of the key things about this program is that we're seeing measurable reductions in supplier emissions as a result of it. And of course, that translates into Scope 3 reductions for us. Most of these partners are now buying renewable electricity. They're switching their fleets to EVs, but not everybody is going at the same speed, and that's okay, But when we're looking at the leading ones, they are saving emissions in the order of hundreds of tons per year. This initiative is also important to us because our stakeholders are increasingly demanding more in terms of transparency from us and in terms of measurement. So whether that's investors or whether that's part of public procurement or a large customer bids, our customers now want to see what we're doing specifically. And we can't win business if we're not able to be more transparent around our emissions. So this is actually helping us commercially as well. So at BT Group, we have applied this to some of our major suppliers. It's now actually also been adopted by the Joint Alliance for CSR. The Joint Alliance for CSR is a trade association for some of the largest telcos in the world, and about half of the members are now following this approach with some of their common suppliers. So I think that's fantastic. I think This is an approach that we have demonstrated achieves results, and we can see it in supplier carbon reduction. We can see it in our own emissions reduction. So hopefully others will follow. What we need is climate action at scale. We need to drive that exponential change. We need more and more companies to set science-based targets to reduce their emissions, and we also need them to cascade these requirements into their supply chains. Implementing contract clauses is one way of doing that, and something that we have seen working at BT Group.